I'm here, joined on stage. I'm Dan Stubbs, by the way, and I'm joined by the... Thank you. I'm joined by the fantastic musical and also now literary talent, Baxter Dury. Round of applause, please, everyone.
How'd you do? Fuck that.
Freestyling already. Okay, so I'm going to ask some questions first, then we're going to throw out to you guys for some questions for you. And then I believe that, excitingly, will be a raffle, which Baxter's going to be calling, so good luck in that, everyone.
I'm a part of the prize.
What is it?
Me?
Right, like a date, or you as a kind of servant for a day?
I just
or?
eat the food. No, nothing. I'm not. Let's carry on. It's weird.
So you put out your... We're primarily here to talk about your fabulous memoir. Do we call it memoir? Autobiography?
Yeah, I think memoir is quite a sort of shitty name because it just alludes to boring or sensationalistic. So something beyond memoir, maybe.
Okay. All right.
I mean, I didn't mean that in a... Yeah, I did.
It's certainly not boring. It sort of reads like a mix between a tale of Dickensian squalor and an early 80s episode of Grange Hill, and possibly a bit of, those confessions films, like Confessions of a Window Cleaner. I'm thinking specifically of that one anecdote with your dad when you had to pretend that he wasn't.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's really quite an incredible read. How many therapists have been in touch with you to give you a quote for their services?
Well, they're a bit late, aren't they? No, none.
It's there's a lot in there. How did you approach kind of telling this story? Because you've not done it in a conventional way at all, have you?
No, I mean, I knew I had some stories, and I think what happens as a result of living in a fantastical world from an early age, good and bad, is you embellish them maybe for negative reasons, for attention and stuff. So I thought I wanted to frame it and put it down and stop, going my dad, and sort of tell the whole story of not just about dad, but put it all into context. But I also thought, I'll blag a book deal of some kind, and I'll get the money, and I probably might not write it, but I'll still get the money, but it's quite cool. I can tell people I blagged it. So I did exactly that, and then the pandemic happened, and I was sort of forced into a
But that's pretty good, isn't it? Because most people came out of the pandemic with maybe, a drinking problem. You came out of it with a book. So that must be quite difficult to find the discipline. Or was the strangeness of it all, did that kind of play into it? Did you have a lot of time to go back into memories?
I had nothing to do, and I just was very disciplined. And my son was doing his A-levels, and he's a sort of kind of turbo nerd. And then I was a bit like, oh, fucking hell. And we both, you'd literally sit at the other side of our very shit table, and we'd both work. And I thought, and I just got to that point where I bullshitted I had the money, I probably spent the money. And there was no touring going on. And it was just I forced it out of me somehow.
Did you enjoy it? Did you enjoy writing it?
No, I don't know if I enjoyed it. No, not at all. But
I will reiterate, you will enjoy reading it.
I enjoyed finishing it. I got this amazing guy that I signed to who's very kind of different, maybe, in that literary world, quite a bit Essex and a bit alternative. And, it's quite gruff, and he just helped me through it in a very clever way. And when I sent some stuff in towards the end of the lockdown, he went, I think we got a fucking book. Or something like that. And without me knowing, I'd finished it, and he was just really, he was brilliant.
That's quite interesting in and of itself, really, because the book, for anyone who doesn't know, Baxter's dad is a legend, and the book really tells this interesting story of you kind of trapped in different worlds, it feels like. You kind of often pinged into a world of posh people that you don't quite get on with, often hanging out with, kind of, let's say, some interesting characters, your babysitter, the Strangler, for example. And you kind of, but you sort of blend into all these different worlds, don't you? You kind of, you find yourself really kind of cheering on the young Baxter as he goes through these adventures.
Yeah, I guess so. I sort of wrote it as much as it happened in my, how you perceive the experience happens in your young mind, from an old mind and stuff. So, but you, as a young person, you don't question it being any different from anybody else. You can try and compare how extraordinary certain aspects of your life are with certain people that you admire, And maybe you kind of drug-addled 6'7" guy taking you to school, you're thinking why no one else is. But you know, you get older and you go to realise that you are the freaks at one point, yeah. But you know, when you're young, you don't question it. You just it feels normal. And that's actually where you don't like feel pissed off by it either. You actually really loved it, you know.
Well, there's a lot of love for your childhood in there, even though there was, you know, you went to quite a lot of schools, it's fair to say, isn't it? Judging by the...
A few, yeah.
Yeah. Never left on good terms.
No, yeah. I mean, I don't know, but yeah, no.
But there's a lot of love for this life that you had. I think you can tell that you feel kind of blessed to have had that experience, as much as some of it was quite painful.
Yeah, I'm trying to learn about it. I don't actually necessarily think I had a bad upbringing, and actually writing the book tamed the idea of feeling sorry for myself, because actually both my parents were really amazing, really hardworking, and Dad was fucking eccentric, more than, and had some sort of brutal parts of his nature, but he wasn't a total cunt. You know, he was like a clever guy, and my mum was amazing. So in fact, I was really blessed, and they were both really clever. So. There's
a bit, I mean, in the book you kind of describe being mortified by it, but there's a bit where your dad essentially does what every kid hopes their dad does, where your deputy head teacher calls up at home to complain about you, and he says what?
Oh, that, yeah. Well, I'd been missing for about 6 months, probably, in and out, and I used to run, my mum used to drive me into one end of the school gates. I used to drive me into one end of the school gates, and I'd run through the corridor and get out the little hole in the whatever, and they couldn't find me for about 6 months, and then eventually, and she was actually a really lovely woman, which is why I was mortified, because even at a precociously young age, I could identify with the sort of being regretful or hurting someone that was essentially nice. But this woman, at that stage that she rang Dad to look for me, was a represented authority or something. So when they eventually found me, and I used to stay at Dad's, and he didn't really care that I was bunking off, I answered the phone stupidly, and it was her looking for me, and she said she talked about the authorities and stuff, and I speak to Dad, and I had to wake Dad up at about 12 o'clock in the afternoon, and and that was a scary proposition alone. And you didn't know what you would find in his room or whatever, you know, you're like, fucking hell. And then he just picked up the old kind of Baker-like phone that he had and acted quite normally for a while, and sort of because he could be quite conservative, Dad, and quite kind of talk quite clearly. And then he just sort of grunted and went, meh, yeah, well, why don't you fuck off, you snotty fucking maggot? And I just thought it was a really turnaround moment where I thought, I love my dad, and I really do love him, and I think he's made some great music. That's so horrible, what he said. I really felt a real crisis of where I belonged.
I think there's that sense, isn't there, of you as a kind of the naif going through this, and you saw a lot of things in that kind of would make people's eyes bleed. It's also interesting that it's a music memoir, but you don't play a note in it, because it stops when you're 22, doesn't it, really? So there's an interesting thing there that happened, you know, the timing of it. You were off sort of trying to discover what your sound might be when your dad got ill. There was never any crossover there, was there, between kind of... he didn't hear an album you put out or anything like that. Is that fair?
No,
Is that
I
right?
don't know if that was intentional or not, because he's quite a foreboding person. I don't know if I would really wanted to play him. I mean, Dad was stuck in his own loop. He's in a sort of self-obsessive loop. And that's why he was great. And it's not his fault that he was like that. But he didn't have much time to work out how good your drum sound is, or what, you know, he didn't really give a fuck, you know what I mean? He wanted you to go and buy him a standard and, you know, whatever. He was like Pinochet, my dad, you know what I mean? It's about the nearest person I can think.
What do you say in the book? A skunk-smelling Fagin or something you call it?
A pot-soaked Fagin.
A pot-soaked Fagin, yeah.
Yeah, he wasn't that, didn't really care about that stuff, yeah, so...
Was there a kind of do you think there was any part of you was sort of reticent about putting out music? I mean, I know that I think you've struggled a bit with the legacy of your surname, haven't you? You know, and this book is a nice way of kind of showing what your version of that was, and that it is such an intrinsic part of of who you are.
Yeah, struggles are different. I think we all need a struggle, and I've got a strange struggle where you need to set aside what people expect from you, from how great someone else may have been, and how you can have a normal journey to being what your version of great is, without it being corrupted by people's... So a certain generation can't get their head round. They just think I'm a sort of fucking cauliflower. You know what I mean? They just can't get like, what the fuck's he on about? And then another generation might not know who Dad was, and they kind of judge what I do, uncontaminated by that. And I think it takes a lot of control not to get sucked into being who you want people, because so many people want you to be a version of your dad, because that's very popular and it's packageable, and you have to work that stuff out. And testament to him and Mum that they allowed us to think independently from that. But that's been my personal fight, which is quite an interest. You need a fight, and that's what I've sort of used to, And there's a point where you get to a bit where you got to embrace it. You've got to embrace who your parents are. And then you've got to kind of separate and be.
And this is, so it's now 20 years since your first album came out?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
It definitely is. Well, as long as Wikipedia is correct. Yeah. Which is that's a milestone really, isn't it? Because interestingly in the book again, it sort of talks about how your dad kind of ditched music and went into acting in what you describe as, you're not very kind about the films he was in.
No.
Well, is there one good one that you would recommend?
No, there's none. I mean, that's just a sort of loss of purpose, isn't it? Because he was great and then he was shit. And, musically, they were shit after a while. They were very shit. It commonly happens. You can be so good. They were so great by accident without really knowing why, and very popular, and that can sort of rob you of how good you are next. Does that make sense? I don't know what the fuck that means.
Yeah, definitely. I think there was a really interesting thing in the book where you said it's like he got to a point where he did a career where he didn't feel like he had to excel in it, almost.
Yeah, maybe, yeah. I think, you just sort of cash in after a while. You're tired, you're internally tired and you cash in.
However, this hasn't happened to you. So it's 2 decades now in the industry. What are you working on at the moment?
Oh, several, media. I'm doing all sorts. Well, am I? I don't know.
Well, Baxter was just telling me he's a surprise EDM superstar all over America, right?
Oh yeah, no. I did a tune with a dance guy who's like a kind of writer guy called. I was about to say Right Said Fred, but his name's not that. Who is Fred again? Yeah, sorry. Right Said Fred. Is he? No, I'm glad Fred's not here. That might be a bit damaging. Right Said Fred again. But no, I just did a tune with this guy without thinking about it. He's just kind of super hot pot. No, I don't mean hot in a sort of sexualized way, but in a more of a corporate way. It's corporately. Next question. He is quite hot. He's very symmetrical.
Next
anyway,
question.
but I'll finish it. I'm on a kind of. He's so popular, and I just saw a thing with him playing in Coachella. And he's really kind of manipulative in a way. He goes, dude, can you Bear Fresh? Can you film yourself with like a gold tooth and introduce the song? And I'm just doing my usual sort of rant over this song. But the song's pretty big in a certain world, and he's playing Coachella. And I saw them yesterday or something on Instagram, and there's a massive, 800,000 foot picture of me with a gold tooth going, oh, like that. And all these people going, I don't know. How the fuck? I've never achieved that.
Contrast that with your real life yesterday, which was what? Getting a haircut, was it?
What? How did I tell you that? You just noticed, did you? Is it that obvious? What do you mean? Making me feel better? What do you mean?
That's nice, though, isn't it? There's a sort of alternate digital you enjoying a sort of a stadium rock career over there.
What do they call it when you've got a fake version of you? What's it?
An avatar.
An avatar, yeah.
Yeah. You should have sent the avatar to do this probably and sent yourself over to Coachella.
Yeah, totally, yeah, but then it wouldn't have worked, would it? Because, no.
I think we're going to ping out to the audience for a question. So hands up, quick. Come on, all of you.
Don't be scared.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, always, yeah.
What's the quickest time into an interview where someone's mentioned
Well, you know what happens is what's interesting is musically I don't get asked so much because I go a bit prickly because I'm more defensive, but in context of writing this book, it allowed me to be less defensive because I started writing about him and writing about me, but it wasn't about him, but yeah, totally and utterly internally in fucking civil war about it. And I start to think, fucking dad, you prick, you know what I mean? But I don't feel that, but that's a legacy I have to constantly deal with, yeah. But, you know, it depends on where you are. Like in France, I don't give a fuck about him. If you're in Germany, they're so obsessed by him. Like, I own Dury, you know what I mean? So...
Because he insisted that you learn German. That was just business matters, was it, that he was hoping that was?
He was just pissed.
Is it right you live in the same house that the...
Yeah, I mean, I'm not doing myself any favours, am I? You know what I mean?
Which
the Ian Dury Museum. Do you live in the Ian Dury Museum? And do you commonly dress up as him? Yes. I do, yeah. I mean, yeah, I do. I mean, dad. But he got bought a house by a record company in the early 80s, and it overlooks Hammersmith Bridge. And it's amazing, and I can't tell you the exact address, but you could work it out. Between the time that he died, it got rented out to the Norwegian Tourist Board. And I didn't see it, and he had another family, consequently, and it paid for them to go to various bohemian posh schools and blah, 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 usual traditional stuff that didn't work out. And then I had the opportunity to rent it back off the family, which was quite controversial, and move back in there with my son and sort of simulate very similar conditions to the way I lived there with Daddy. But my son's really smart, amazingly different prospect than we've been. So we're quite different, and he doesn't smoke weed or put anything in his eyeballs or up his arse. Well, he doesn't put chemicals up his arse, and it's a sort of a version. You know, time moves on, but we're still there. But when we moved back in there, some of the neighbours, because it's an amazing flat, so you don't want to move out of there. So some of the neighbours have lived there for over 40 years. So when we moved back in, they were like, fucking hell, here they are. And I go, no, it's fine.
I've changed.
But slowly and surely they thought, no, they are. They're just I'm a different version of a cunt. A modern cunt. Which is my new book, Modern Cunt.
So you mentioned you have your own son there. There's an element from the book where it seems like the chaos that your dad caused occasionally, you quite enjoyed it. Do you try and throw spanners in the works of your son's life like that?
I don't try. I mean, you are what you're from, and your natural tendencies to react emotionally and stuff are informed by how you've been brought up, right? So I might not react as what other people might perceive as conventionally to certain situations because of what's happened to you, and maybe as a result, sometimes he thinks you're a bit curious the way What I mean is it all changes, doesn't it? So not to talk about Dad constantly, but it's interesting because why I've written this book, Dad is the author of a certain type of chaos that allowed me to be free and mad and see all this shit. So you have to he's responsible for keeping everyone alive. So he's quite smart because he's gone, right, everyone... he's lit in the touch paper and going, right, go everyone, you're going to fucking do what you want. And we all went, do what we want. And he managed to make enough money or managed to bring everyone back in, more or less. Does that make sense? So he's a very strong character that's gone, right, we're going to cause as much chaos as possible, but you're all going to more or less be all right. But things have moved on. That chaos, Cosmo, my son, isn't expected to do what I was. I was an experiment. I was a young experiment.
It really.
I just worked it out.
You really. Thank you. You really paint a picture of life in 1980s London as well as a kid back then. That's so kind of rich, and I just love the way you kind of observed all fads that came your way, didn't you? It was like hip hop, graffiti, breakdancing. You'll do anything.
Well, we were into a sort of different thing than most, we weren't floppy-haired, our crew. We were knobs, but we weren't like, we didn't go, some people were floppy-haired, and we were more kind of thought we were adopting from America and stuff, and hip-hop and things like that were coming in.
If you weren't wearing a white suit, I'd ask you to do the worm for us now.
I could do it in a white suit, but I won't, but I could. I fucking could. It would look good as well.
I bet it would.
Especially at neon, but another conversation.
Let's have another question from the audience, please. Okay, yes, please.
I don't, but what should I live by? I don't think I do. I don't think I'm stuck by... Motto's sort of a bit conservative, isn't it? Isn't it a bit like... should I say? Well, I mean, don't worry too much, but definitely worry a little bit. I like a lot of American music, to be honest. I like a lot of those, and it's kind of obvious. But I listen to is a lot of Kendrick and things like that, just because I find him really fucking fucked and rude and weird, and I like the music, and scary, and I don't understand it. Lyrically, I sort of don't understand it, and I sort of, that's probably the most. But not to call myself a twat all the time, but I feel sometimes when I'm listening to it, I'm like, God, I look a bit of an idiot here. but I really do think it's the best music, actually. I think it is all certain bits of it, anyway, yeah.
When you were finding your own sound that time, so the book starts with you on this trip abroad, where you were kind of, you'd gone to Austin, hadn't you, to sort of figure out what Baxter Dury sounds like. What were the elements that went into that then? So there's, it's lyrically dense often, isn't it? Kind of it's not a kind of an easily pigeonhole, is it, your music?
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't listen to it. I mean, I thought you were talking about something else there, but I went off. I don't know.
I rambled on a bit with that question, so I don't blame you for drifting off.
I don't think you should pigeonhole your own music. Your music's just, I think I sound like Kendrick, to be honest, but I don't. And you got to believe in something, go there, and you kind of you don't get to choose your audience, and in a way you're just trying to be Al Green or whoever, and you're not, but as long as you try, and you're sort of good enough, and you're quite good, which I am, you kind of get somewhere, don't you, eventually. But I don't know if you ever are the thing you think you are, or you should be, really. If you were the person you were mimicking something so clearly that...
It's because there's this missing chunk, between the end of the book and the start of your music career. It's like, It feels like you could have joined any one of a dozen Britpop bands if you wanted to. Probably you knew all those people, but you sort of went AWOL in music terms in that decade, in the 90s.
Yeah, I wasn't really making music in the 90s.
You were filming Challenge Annika for a while,
which was doing stuff like that. Yeah, but I think that's the kind of, coming from a famous background stuff, you kind of, you put off, or you're a bit scared. That's a scary idea to become. And the legacies are awful, aren't they? Inheritances and musical legacies are kind of terrible. Pop music ones are awful. Kind of classical ones are great and all that, and actors get away with it. I mean, Cumberbatch will have a great young, proposition, but I think it's a weird sentence, isn't it?
It depends how much is left in the Cumberbatch.
Yeah.
That was a dirty joke, sort of. Any more questions, please? Hands up. Yes, sir, over there.
You know what? Last week I went to a funeral for a guy called Derek the Drawer, who used to sell Dad pot, actually. And he sang with the Blockheads for the last 10, 15 years, and sadly he died. And it was a classic kind of situation. There was a cardboard coffin with some hashish signs all around it. A guy called the Rocking Barge, he sang. And there was two guys I talked to, and they were both called, one on Savoury was called Mick the Fascist, and I went, I don't really know why you're called Mick the Fascist. And the other guy was called Mickey Two Sewers, and I spoke to him and went, ooh, and I realised why he was called Mickey Two Sewers, because he fucking stank. But he's obviously been called that for decades, and he still stank. So anyway, and there I saw a whole bouquet of old characters they're the ones I remember.
Well, how do they react to you these days? Because you
They all think you're like, they all think, they all think that we're kind of like Ian Dury millionaires, they're all a bit.
Oh right,
they're all 80, not to be in a negative way, but they were quite old, and they all think that we're probably like the Kardashians.
So they. So they're kind of pulling up royalty check situations from about 1984, are they? Going like,
there's a little bit of that going on, which is true. No, it's not. It's not.
Any more questions? Yes.
Have you always dressed so well?
No. Yeah. This is the only clothes I could find this morning.
But you did say, so tell us what your son said on you leaving the house today.
Well, I shouldn't say that. He did call me a cunt when I left. He doesn't say things like that. He went, Dad, it's quite posh. And Dad, you look like a bit of a cunt. You're going to watch the football? And I went, thanks, mate.
And you just come back from a tropical holiday as well, so this is quite a...
he went out to save turtles, like all middle-class kids do. And I thought, well, if you're going to go and save turtles in Costa Rica, I better come and see if you're okay. So so I went and met him in Costa Rica in a place called Santa Rosa in the corner of some idyllic beach, and we learnt to surf for 4 weeks, and the fucking best thing I've ever done. Absolutely loved it.
Are there still turtles there that need saving after your visit?
Well, I didn't see the turtles. Obviously, I just saw the. We were sort of dad and son kind of surfing operation, and he was really good because he's lithe and and good at that sort of stuff. And I was a bit of a comedy, but it was great. It was just an amazing place to be. And there are macaws that fly down, and there are Costa Rica. And I'm going to bore. Let's just talk about Costa Rica. Costa Rica is a sort of uninvasive island, so the monkeys have never been. Kind of fed. You're not allowed to feed monkeys, so they're in their natural natural behavioural environment, and everyone they look at you, they kind of humanly look at you, but they don't do that begging thing which I've experienced in other countries. Not to bore the fuck.
So there's just a really good class of monkey out there.
I mean, it's just fucking magical. I could go on forever. Anyway, carry on. Next question.
So, we've been talking about the book, obviously. There's a lot of people who pop up in there, especially some school day characters. Like I say, the theme tune from like Grange Hill with that sausage being banged, that kept popping up in my head. You got some japes in there, I think. There's some Tucker Jenkins sort of stuff. Has anyone got in touch going like, I am a deputy head now, can you please, why did you have to put my name in this?
No one's reacted like that. And obviously there were, like when I made the book, there were 36 different name changes, which is the most that company have ever had. Because I had to check, because you can't say anything about anyone in a compromising light without verifying it from the person that you're talking about. So you've got to be very careful about that sort of stuff.
How did you come up with all the fun new names then?
You know what I've found, and kind of quickly, is you don't think about it. You just fucking first name that comes in is it, because that's what people are named.
All right, give me a new one.
Leonard. Anyway, I could do it forever, and you just go bang. Lawrence and Leonard are favourites of mine. But yeah.
Let's do another question. Come on, don't be shy. Yes, please.
Older. Sorry, Karen.
She's a long way away.
I think I'm sort of been forced to be, in a way, and I've sort of used it sometimes like negatively to sort of appeal to people, or maybe when I was young for like attention, and then I've sort of just talked about it so much, then that's kind of probably why I'm quite good at doing this. And I don't know if it's a positive or a negative thing, but you just learn how to make it into something, yeah. Do you know what I mean? I just learned how to make it into like, oh, well, fuck it, that's what's happened, so I'll talk about it. Yeah.
But it's really interesting because the book is written in this kind of clipped, really sparse prose, isn't it? There's no flab in there, and you never really say what it made you feel. You're never a victim in any of these things, or you never kind of play it off as like, poor me, this happened to me, and it's always really, I tried to feed someone a sandwich of shit, and then this happened. Yeah. That is in there.
I find like overwriting, like it's like playing too many guitar notes. You know what I mean? I just find it too indulgent. So I try to delitterize it. Or men are the worst at going, autumn attacked me like a hungry crocodile. You know, whatever the fuck. You're like, oh, fuck off. So I got rid of the crocodile.
Did you find the process quite similar to writing lyrics in that sense? Because your lyrics are...
I go to town on my lyrics, you know what I mean? I really go to... But I did the opposite process, writing. I just got rid of that shit that I found was indulgent, yeah. I don't know if that's good or bad, actually, but...
I mean, it takes you by surprise sometimes, because you'll just pass something off, like a huge life event will just be 2 sentences, you know.
Well, that's also the skill... writing's a fucking skill beyond all of us, and to remember something and sort of find the essence of the exciting aspect of an event is one thing, and to put it into sociological context is Graham Greene. You know, you're fucking another level. So to write something and what happened and sort of get a bit of it in your language is you took everything out of me. To put it into a flow of, you know, how the great people do. I'm not even, it's just it's beyond how that happens. I don't know.
There is another book to be written, clearly.
Yeah.
Will you require another global pandemic to get it out of you?
No, I've been asked to do it. Now, you know what's really, I shouldn't talk about this too much, but I will. But you know, there's a sort of TV company trying to do something with it. So I've got a meeting next week, and that'll be fun. But they've also want me to go and write another one. But I want to write it fictionally, with sort of, you know, what they call auto-fiction or something, where you kind of can bullshit it. So you're not talking about, because the next year's like a 30-year-old bloke, and I couldn't think of anything duller than the exploits of a 30-year-old man. You know what I mean? I just thought, So I thought I'd just write it. So I've sort of based it on the truth, and I'm going to fictionalise it a bit more. And I think they're going to let me do that.
Love the idea of a TV series. Where do you think they would pitch it? Because I guess you could go Trainspotting at one.
But it's the same company that I better not say. I'm going to curse it. No, I'm going to shut up. But they're good people.
Well, I was going to say
they've got big eyebrows. These motherfuckers.
You could play it a couple of ways, though, couldn't it? It could be a kind of grit. It could be gritty, or it could be the in-betweeners, like almost parts of it.
I think you're at the mercy to 1,000 writers. So we'll see what happens, and they find the essence of something.
Who would you like to see play the young you?
Well, my son said it this morning. He went, I can play you, and he's too handsome. No, I was like, you're too handsome, son.
Can he do the accent?
No, he's too
You can
posh.
do his.
He's too posh, handsome, and idle. So I don't know about that, actually. I don't know. But, you know, obviously we've had a film done about Dad, and there was a kid playing me in that already.
What was that like? What was the
experience?
experience?
Weird. I made him cry by accident, because I just made him cry by accident, and his mum told me off.
Go on. There's a story there. Go on.
Well, I can't really remember the context of it.
Did you give him a wedgie?
I just when I wouldn't fucking talk like that, you know, twat or something, you know. But I didn't mean it like I wasn't calling. I was trying to sort of badinage. Is that the right word? It was bad badinage. But he started crying. I realised he was only 11, and he got upset. And Andy Circus or somebody like that steamed in and all that stuff. But yeah.
Was it weird seeing Andy Circus playing your dad as well? I mean, that must have been quite a...
Yeah, it was fine. I mean, they're nice people, but it's kind of a simplified version of your life, and it's fine. But it's also a bit stupid. And I think Andy Circus is a lovely guy, but he probably got a little inkling what it's like to be a decadent lunatic, and then tried to go with it. He went a bit pewter, you know, he went a bit like, he went with it, and you started to rein him in a little bit. Like he started flicking ashtrays off restaurant tables. And you're like, fuck off, you're a sort of walnut-faced actor. No, you know what I mean? There was a bit of that, you had to go, you know, you're not. My stepmom actually grabbed him and went, Ian was my lover for many years, and he was very handsome, you know. And he went,
One more question, sorry. Okay, well, it should go out to you guys. So if you've been sitting on a burning question this whole time, please put your hand up right now. Come on. It's a shy audience.
What is wrong with you? Ask me a question. No.
That's a great question to end on.
No, I didn't. I actually did a TV show with them recently, and I spoke to them briefly, and they weren't. No, I didn't even know about it until then. So no, I mean, good for them.
How do you pronounce that word? Because I've never been able to work it out. Well, the two words.
I go like I sort of say it quite kind of Kent or something. Chaise Longue, Chaise Longue. I don't think anyone. The whole point of the book is that no one knew what a Chaise Longue was.
Like Boise from there
was never a chaise. You know, there didn't exist. The thing. So it was a sort of imagined